Hi, everybody. Welcome to 352, show number 352, that is, for Tuesday, the 24th of November, 2020. I'm your host, Tom Ehman, along with my co-host, Julia Vedekint, with us, of course, as usual, here in Studio B at the Beach Street Yacht Club in beautiful, it is a beautiful day, Julia, in San Francisco. I trust you're well.
I am.
Preparations well underway for Thanksgiving, which here in the States is this Thursday. Mm-hmm. That was just that wasn't very enthusiastic.
It's going to be a weird Thanksgiving.
It is going to be a weird Thanksgiving. Thank you all for joining us. We got a special show today because joining us live via Skype from Annapolis in just a few moments, he's standing by patiently, is Britt Ward, who is the senior naval architect, senior vice president. He's the muckety muck at Far Yacht Design, a longtime friend, and we'll get to Britt in a second. After we do our Vendée segment first, and then we've got a very interesting compare and contrast, thanks to Britt, of the 4 B2s, the second boats now that are out in the wild, out live from the 4 teams, the 3 challengers, and Emirates Team New Zealand. So without further ado, why don't we get on with it? I said Britt, who is the senior vice president, senior naval architect at Far Yacht Design, is with us today. We want to thank him very much for taking the time. Julie, over to you.
Yes, good opportunity to like, share, and subscribe.
It is indeed. Comments, of course, welcome too. We're trying to get to 1,000 subs on YouTube. 1,000 subs does magical things with the YouTube algorithm, so please do subscribe. Hit that subscribe button right now, whether you're in replay or you're with us live. Hit the notification bell, that little bell, if you want to hear what's going on and get notifications of when we go live and other posts. Also, if you'll support us over on Patreon, patreon.com/join Sailing Illustrated. Become a patron. We appreciate $1 a month, $5, $20, maybe more a month. It helps with this media, viewer-supported media, which is our now closing in. Well, we're not really closing in, but north of 350 shows, Julie. It's hard to believe.
Yes.
Even Britt said when we were doing the tech check, he said, wow, 350 shows. I can't believe it. Time does fly. And Britt's been, I'll have to ask Clark Chapin, hope he's watching, how many times Britt has been on the show. I'm not 100% sure, but a handful of times, and we're really delighted to have him back. Speaking of the Vendée Globe, it is going on. As you know, we're into day 17 now, midway through almost the third week of the Vendée Globe. Started a couple Sundays ago, 2 weeks ago this past Sunday. Nonstop, around alone. Starting in France, going around south of Cape of Good Hope, Cape Lewin, south of New Zealand, fall off the the edge of the earth, come back around Cape Horn, or as Paul Caird calls it, the Corn, and then back up to France to the finish in 70 some odd days. I think the record's 74 days. And of course, the little arrows are added to that map to help you out. What's the current status? It is not complicated. They're in the South Atlantic now, over toward South America, about to turn left, turn toward the east to go toward the Cape of Good Hope after they get into the westerlies down there in the lower latitudes. Apivia, Charlie Dalan has, Dalan, some people say Dallin, some people say Dalan, has taken the lead after, I'm sure you've all heard the news about Alex Thompson, who's had some problems with structural problems within the front end of the boat, the bow. We'll run a video on that in a moment. But Charlie's now in the lead, linked out. Thomas Ruyant, who was running second, is still running second, about only a few miles back when I last checked. Now, this is a couple hours old by now. Yes, we can. The popular Jean Lecombe, who's age 61, is only 10 miles back of the leader. And Kevin Escoffier is also... he's back further than that. One's 50 miles. I was looking at the knots. 52 miles, then 287 miles for Jean Lecombe, and Kevin Escoffier 300 and almost 30 miles in arrears of Apivia. Now, Apivia is an older boat, but doing well. Nonetheless, it's got the straight-in dagger foils, dagger boards, and it doesn't have the big semi-lifting. But here's the official video from Vendée Globe as of a couple hours ago.
On est au milieu de l'anticyclone de Sainte-Hélène et j'ai Boris Herman juste derrière moi. Ça fait 2 jours que l'on navigue ensemble.
これが気象部位です。今からこの気象部位を海に放って、観測したいと思います。よろしくお願いします。頼むぞ。ちゃんと観測してくれよ。
Voilà, on a passé l'équateur cette nuit avec l'Occitane en Provence.
There's one patch of laminate. There's another.
On va faire une petite offrande au dieu Neptune pour qu'il soit clément, bienveillant et qu'il nous protège sur tout ce parcours.
C'est pas possible d'avoir 10 jours de reaching sur le même bord et que je sois là, quoi. Je sais pas comment que ça se fait, quoi.
Ouais, comment tu vois les choses là pour ce soir? Ça va être compliqué au niveau vent. Hein.
Je me suis pas encore trop perché là-dedans. J'étais un peu occupé là avec la manœuvre. Et j'ai pas bien dormi la nuit. J'ai essayé de dormir un peu ce matin. J'ai pas réussi.
On file vers le sud.
I love these.
Yeah.
À la poursuite des concurrents et dans cette fabuleuse course qu'est le Vendée Globe. Voilà, bonne journée à tous, à très bientôt.
I think I just leave the mics up during these videos because it's fun to react and get Julia's reactions and drinking out of her Andrew Pindar cup of coffee. Yeah, one of you, somebody, Gordon Smith, somebody said, wish we could train Tom to hit refresh on the Vendée site. Well, Gordon, I'm putting that into the slides, into the keynote presentation, which has all the slides and has all of the videos and so on. And I'd do it a couple hours ago. If I didn't have Brit on the other computer, I'd go to the website and, like we do, and update it and hit refresh and get to the latest news. But we'll keep following. We'll be back again on Friday, of course, with the latest. But there's more on the Vendée. Have a look at a couple other interesting things. This leader, Apivia, Charlie Dalan, it's not usually like this, he's saying. Dalan fighting for meters. Davies and Burton have already turned now turned left and heading more southerly, more southeasterly. Destermau and Thompson in repair mode, as you know, although Thompson's now limping along or maybe proceeding better than that. Charlie Dalan Vendée Globe leader since yesterday morning, confirmed that he is in full, quote, inshore mode, fighting for every meter I can gain as he tries to break through to the Southern Ocean low-pressure train, which should finally catapult him eastwards towards the longitude of the Cape of Good Hope, which the leaders should pass during the night of Sunday, this coming Sunday, into Monday. For all of the predictions that the fast new-gen foilers would surely break the record, the 74-day record on this schedule, they will already be 4 days behind the 2016-2017 pace. In fact, there's a lot of race left, so that things could change. But in fact, Alain is on the same stretch of South Atlantic, which yielded a 24-hour record for Alex Thomson in 2016-17, but which could not be validated because he did not break it by 1 full mile. They can't just break it by a partial mile. The 36-year-old solo skipper of Apivia observed Riley today, quote, I had expected this stage of the South Atlantic to be one of the fastest sections of the round-the-world race, and I am missing out. Okay, so he goes on. You can read that on their website. Very interesting updates. Again, there's a fire hose of info coming out from the Vendée Globe website, and I commend it to you, as well as the videos on that site. Now, speaking of the wind, again, this from a couple hours ago, you can see they're going through this light patch. The dark blue is the lightest, 0 to 5 knots, and a little bit bluer than that. Blue-green is the 5 to 10 knots, and then the greenish gets into 10 and then 15. And the question is, when do you turn left toward, you can see Cape Town way over here on, if you come to camera 4 here, way over here is Cape Town. They need to leave that, obviously, Cape Town to port, and then the Cape of Good Hope. But you can see the confused wind. It's not very, Julia, you're getting notices from your boyfriends again on your watches. And it's a difficult, treacherous patch of water that they have to negotiate through to get through the winds until they can get down there to the south, where the westerlies fill in, and they will turn left and fly across the bottom of the world, hopefully. Okay, so that's the latest there. Here is the standings, the order as we knew them last time I checked an hour or so ago. Charlie in Apivia, Thomas in Linked Out, Jean Lecombe, Yes We Can, quite a ways back, Kevin Escoffier, Boris Herman. I had a nice Boris Herman video, but it was too long. It was him about to make a jibe, to take a jibe there. And I commend it to you again to their video page, because there's videos coming off all of the boats almost constantly, it seems. Yannick Betstaven is in 6th. Alex Thomson has fallen to 7th. He's only 456 miles back, but that's a long ways back compared to where he was when he was leading before the damage, the damage. Sam Davies down there in 10th. So here is the Alex Thomson video that I think you will quite enjoy. The guy's so upbeat. He's such a good-natured soul, considering what's happened to him, and a great ambassador, if you will, for our sport. Enjoy.
Hello, everybody. Well, as you can see, I've got a sail up again. That means I'm sailing in the right direction. It means I'm back in the race, and that's fantastic news. Super happy about that. It's been a tough couple of days, an awful lot of work, cutting, grinding, sanding, gluing, and there's still a lot more to go. It's certainly not over yet, but the structure in the bow is now stable. It's not moving anymore, and so I can sail in these moderate conditions, and it's not going to get too windy for now, so I'm able to sail and sail in the right direction. So happy days. Obviously disappointing, but I'm not going to dwell on the negatives here, because I think there's way more positives. Positive that I found it before it was catastrophic. Positive that it happened in the conditions it happened in, which meant the leaders and the rest of the fleet weren't moving away at 500 miles a day. you know, could have been 1,000 miles behind by now. So that's super positive. And I'm just super happy that I'm still in the game. It's, you know, so easily could have been the end of the race for me. So yeah, all positive really. Certainly that's how I'm seeing it. Now there's still a lot to do. I've still got the laminating to do, and I'm going to add some girders in way of those capping planks that are broken. So there's probably a night and a half's work to do. It's so hot up there, it's unreal. I'm completely drenched. It's so humid, so it's very difficult conditions to work. Night time's an awful lot easier. The next few days, I had a quick look at the routing, is going to be quite light, so good conditions for me to finish the job. And then I got to tidy the mess up, because I can tell you the boat is a heap. I mean, apart from the carbon dust all over my beautiful baby, the inside, every single bag's been open. I've rifled through everything. There's bits of carbon, there's paper towel, there's, I mean, you name it, there's rubbish everywhere. So I got to tidy that mess up pretty quickly. Anyway, so that's pretty much it. Obviously, you guys from the videos might think I might know what I'm doing. I can promise you I don't know what I'm doing. I've been directed under the skillful eye of Pete Hobson, and he's obviously been in communication with VPLP and Gurit, the engineers. So everybody's super confident that this is going to be a pretty mega repair and be in you know, in the condition to be able to go to the Southern Ocean. It probably doesn't look like it now. It doesn't look like it to me now, but I can see what I'm going to be adding. So wait until you've seen the rest of it, and then you might think, wow, that's pretty strong. So thanks for watching.
He is super upbeat, super positive. You got to give him credit, Julia,
Absolutely.
don't you think?
Absolutely.
I
believe him.
Yeah, well, I do believe him. And as Wet Hog just said in the comments, he said, I'm not sure I'd be going into the Southern Ocean with a lot of structural, with any structural problems. And that's a good point. Alex Thompson, of course, from Great Britain, sailing for his longtime sponsor, Hugo Boss, the German clothier. Clothier? Is that the right word, do you think?
Sure.
I think so, too. They were our sponsor when I was involved in Formula One. Again, I commend to you their Vendée Globe YouTube page with this, again, fire hose of videos coming out almost hour by hour. Look at that. This is not the last couple hours, but it just is nonstop, and there's a lot of cool stuff, almost too much stuff, which is why we're here to curate for you and get you hopefully the best and the coolest stuff. Let's get into the cup, and while we're doing that for our AC 36 cup date, let's bring in our good friend, longtime friend, who Clark Chapin tells us has been on the show, 3 other times, Britt? And he says you actually haven't been on since over a year, since sometime in 2019, I think I saw that comment. Wow. Welcome, Britt. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
You're in Annapolis. It looks like you're working from home. How long have you been working at home instead of at the Far Yacht Design office, in the beautiful Far Yacht Design office?
Going on the better part of 6 months, you know. But we're getting pretty good at working remotely. So I'm catching perhaps off guard. How's business? I'm hearing from people here on the West Coast that the small boat, that really the sailing market is pretty slow. The powerboat market seems to be good. People in the pandemic during this period want to get a powerboat, go powerboating. It takes a little time to turn the ignition on and back out of the slip and go. But the time to go sailing is people seem not to have it or don't want to have it. And what time they want to spend, I guess, with their families. And I don't quite know why sailing is down. So are you seeing that on the East Coast? I mean, I think used boat market for sail and power is going astronomically right now.
Used boat market.
Yeah, used boat market. And sail and power. We're getting a lot of inquiries at the upper end of the market space, and we're doing this new 30-footer, and that's getting a massive amount of interest around the world too. So I'm not seeing, right now I could be working 18 hours a day, it feels like, and not get everything done I need to get done in time. So
Mm.
No,
Yeah,
it's good.
Fog. You see this comment, Julia, from Fog Machine. I can put Brett up there in the shot with us. Yeah, it's looking like the used boat market, he is saying, is also quite healthy. The brokers tell me that the used cruising sailboat market is huge right now. Cruise?
Yeah, cruising for sure, and well, and I hear caravans and RVs because there's no hotels to go to. A lot of people have decided this is going to be their vacations for the future, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. What other comments, Julie, before we move on? Schwentner is saying hi from Villamora. Love this never say die attitude Jonathan Frank is saying about Alex Thompson. I think that is so true. A white boat next time. Why is he having structure? Britt, you don't want to probably comment on this, but why is he having structural problems in that boat? I mean, it's a brand new boat. He sailed it a lot of miles. He should be well tested. Was it just bad, tough conditions, or was it bad design and engineering, or what?
I mean, from the video, it's hard to look at, but that's a really big truss that seems to have cracked right through. So, and whether that was a result of him heading straight for that low in the beginning and having sailing through 7-meter seas or what, I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, the Imoca class pushes you towards the lightest possible structure you can do. I mean, because you've got a one design fin and a one design rig and a bulb weight requirement. So the only way you make a lighter boat that foils faster is to take it out of the structure. So I think everyone's on that line trying to thread it. I'm glad for Alex that it happened here and he can fix it. I mean, that's great. He's sailed a few of our boats around. So,
what do you think? Well, before we leave Vendée Globe and get into the Cup, and we are going to get into the Cup in a big way, thanks to you. What is your thinking on the Imoca 60 in the next ocean race? The ocean race now delayed till 22, 23,
yeah.
Right? Late 22 into 23. And they're using your boats, your FAR 60, the offshore?
60, the Ocean 65s are going again.
And are they all spoken for, do you know?
They have all been sold, I believe. Whether all those teams will get to the race, but I believe they're required to field the boats or turn the boats over to another team, is my understanding. So I think that fleet will be certainly there, and I think there's still perhaps some questions on whether the Imoca is going to draw enough of these teams out of the Vendée Globe.
Yeah, it's one hears that there isn't much uptake from other than Charlie Enright, and what's his
11th hour
11th hour racing.
Mark
Towell was the name I was trying to grab out of the air. And Mark and Charlie, they're entered. They say they're going in a crewed Imoca 60, but the crewed Imoca 60s are quite different, aren't they, than these single-handed or double-handed boats?
Well, I think if you have a clean sheet of paper designing for the ocean race course, it would be a different boat. I don't think there's much question about it. They've got the luxury that they get to build one entirely from scratch. But I mean, I think you can see from their videos that transatlantic with 5 people jammed in a boat designed for one person is pretty brutal.
Exactly. Well, how difficult will they all be built from scratch? I guess is the question. Can you mod one of these single-handed or double boats that are used in single and double-handed racing and sail it in the crewed the ocean race? Is that just out of the question?
No, I mean the crewed configuration rules are written to allow a single-handed boat to go with minor modification to fit into the rule. So I think that was the intent from the get-go. So there's no reason you couldn't, other than the fact it has to be one of the newer foiling boats. There's no reason 3, 4, 5 of these Vendée Globe boats couldn't do the race. It's just whether they can get the sponsorship and the backing to do it.
It's a pretty quick turnaround, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
They're done here in this race in 74 days is the record. So, and they're a little more than 14 in now. So another, call it 50 days, 60 days. So 2 months.
Yeah.
Is that about right? So 2 months from now is December, January. By the end of January, early February, they're done, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, shall we move on to the Cup, to our AC36 Cup date? I want to start with a Bravo Zulu, Cup related, but nonetheless.
There's
Sorry, Julia?
there was a question from James Frederick Bland, but about was the damage on Alex's boat undiscovered from his prior incident in the Atlantic?
I don't know. Britt, do you know that? The answer to that?
That was definitely a result of this race. It wasn't there when the boat started, for sure.
Right. So it was up in when they went into that big, right off the bat. I mean, early on in the race, it was a rough go. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to go on with this Bravo Zulu, and it is to this guy. Everybody, a lot of you will recognize him. He's one of the most celebrated yachting photographers in the modern era of the sport. He's our longtime friend. I've done I don't know how many Cup campaigns with him when he was our official team photographer. Super snapper Gilles Martin-Raget from France. Bravo Zulu to him. He's now down in Auckland shooting videos. We're going to show some of his videos, and I've had a back and forth with him overnight. He's delighted that we're using his videos. He's going to send us some exclusive videos. He's posting on his own YouTube page now. He's only got 75 followers, so go subscribe on his page as well. But Bravo Zulu to Gilles for this. Mirabad, who's been running this yacht racing image of the year and video of the year competition for some years now, because of the COVID, they are this year running the image of the century since the turn of the century, 2000. And Gilles has been awarded the first prize as winner of the Mirabad Yacht Racing Image of the Century, of this century. Here is the photo.
It really is incredible.
It is an amazing photo. Britt, did you ever sail on any of these boats, or these big tries?
No, I never had luck to sail at any of those Orma 60s, but they're amazing machines.
They are indeed. And we have the official word. It was just released today before we went to air. The international jury decided to honor the French photographer Gilles Martin-Raget and his image of the Orma 60 Fujifilm 2, the trimaran, taken during the Cour de Faris. I don't know how to pronounce that in French. Julie, you're our resident. You're our French expert.
Couche de Phare.
Couche de Phare. Doesn't look like Couche. Looks like Cour. Cour de Phare.
Course de Phare.
Okay. 2002, so early in the century. This picture shows the famous French sailor Loic Perron in a very special stretch of water called, Julia?
The True du Diable.
Yeah, the something of the devil. What's the trough? The true.
The treasure?
The trough, the something of the devil, located south of the island of Ushant in Brittany.
The bottom.
Is that bottom? Le Trou is bottom? The trough? A sailing photographer. Sorry, our friend. We can do German and we can do Spanish, but we got to get Julie to tune up.
I got to tune up my French.
Her French. Britt, how's your French?
Not as good as it should be.
And we'll get Meg on here to do Italian. But let's look at the comments. Somebody will come on here. Gordon Smith, that speaks French, and others. A sailing photographer since 1986, Gilles Martin-Raget is based in Marseille and regularly contributes to the most prestigious sailing pubs, in addition to being the official photographer of several sailors and teams. That is true, of course. He said, I'm elated and very, very happy. I have entered a photo nearly every year since the creation of the contest, and like any competition, it is good to win from time to time. Of course, being able to choose in 20 years archives gave a bit of a bonus to the old foxes like me, as many entrants are rather young guys. This is good news, but the future belongs to them. The ever humble, the ever gracious Gilles Martin-Raget, a longtime friend. And here's a video that he prepared of the photos before and after this award-winning photo was taken. It's only 45 seconds long, but have a look at this.
It's the original washing machine.
Nice stuff, isn't it?
Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah, that was quite some video. Of course, Gilles is an accomplished sailor himself. Do you know what year this photo was taken, Julia? It's a 12.
Oh, it's
Newport.
You said it earlier on, and
1983. Gilles Martin-Raget was the starboard trimmer on France 3. You see over his shoulder, over his left shoulder, who is skippering?
Oh, it's Bruno.
It is Bruno Troublé skippering France 3, Newport, 1983. And you think these photogs have an easy life of it? Have a look at Gilles and one of his colleagues shooting here on San Francisco Bay in 2013, strapped in to the camera boat. Cambria was the name of this camera boat from memory.
That's nice knee exercise.
Yeah, it's such a workout. You don't realize. Even just out on an offshore boat, you don't realize how much of a workout you're getting sitting in the boat and trying to maintain your balance, let alone racing. I just, okay, enough of all this. I just think it's a terrific video, and I called this GMR's AC-34 office here on San Francisco Bay. Quite a guy, wonderful photographer, and arguably his, this was one of my favorite photos of his, and this, of course, is from Bermuda 2017, the Challenger Selection Series, when Emirates Team New Zealand went ass over tea kettle, buried their bows, did a cartwheel. This is his amazing GMR, Gilles Martin-Raget heli photo from AC-35.
It is.
In Bermuda. And, of course, he was up in the heli, and he's snapping away. I don't know how many shots per second he's getting, but he's click, 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 getting them. And what, I mean, Brett, you got to admit, that's a pretty cool photo.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah. It's amazing.
And he's an amazing photographer. We're delighted that he's in Auckland. And so is Bruno, by the way. Bruno just made it out of quarantine into the ETNZ launch last Wednesday. And here is his first, that is Gilles Martin-Raget's first video from down there that he sent us. This is his, obviously, Britannia. And we're going to be asking Britt, who's also given us some videos and rather photos, images that he's collected, to compare and contrast all four of these B2s of the second boats, the race boats, presumably, for all four teams. This is B2 for Ineos Team UK. Britannia 2, I guess they're calling it. Anything interesting here, Brett?
I think you notice the bow down trim of the boat and how low that keel is to the water. Kind of just emphasizing how important it is to get the entire aero package reflected from the water. We'll talk a bit about that as we go through.
Okay. Anything else? What about the inflection in there? You're going to talk about it. I don't want to get ahead of the story, probably.
Yeah, no, there's some interesting things on that foil and unique ones on that side anyway. I think the other side has a different foil on it. So
what's the rule as to number of foil packages?
I'm trying to remember. I think is
it 3?
Yeah, 3 sets.
3 sets, though, right? So you can have 6 total because you don't have to have symmetry. You don't have to have the same foil on each side. Okay, I'll leave you up in the shot. Here's another GMR. I hope we don't get a copyright strike, Julia, for this music. I hope Gilles has...
Well, turn the sound off.
Well, that's probably a good idea. I'll turn the sound off just in case this is not rights-free music that Gilles put on his videos. Britt, what do you think of the, apparently the upper range, this boat's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with the stability of this one. I mean, it's flight stability in all conditions, it seems like they've made a real leap forward, so they can just push this thing really hard. I guess we have some pics from today, and it was blowing, and it's only them and Team New Zealand out in the water, so they're clearly comfortable, and that probably speaks to more time in the boat than anyone else.
Yeah, they've had more time on the water, right? So that is obviously to their advantage. And let's go have a look at some of these other photos. These are photos now, Britt, that you sent. Let me take you out of the corner there and talk us through these first four.
Yeah, so I mean, between watching Vendée Globe updates and trying to do my work, I try to grab some of these pictures when I see interesting ones come by. And so this is a bit of a collage of end-on views as best we can. Unfortunately, Team New Zealand Boat 2 in the lower right doesn't have its foils outstretched, but you can see both some symmetry, some commonalities between them in the thinking, and some pretty substantial differences. So, and I think that's, the nature of the design. Each team's made different choices to suit where they think the race is going to be won. Is it in the takeoff? Is it in a pre-start? Uprange, downrange, and all those choices are reflected in every little bit of these machines, I think. Are you optimizing for a single target design point or a much broader one? And I think that is part of what's driving the differences here. So I've kind of gone through and extracted some shots I've caught of various places for each boat in sort of the order they were launched. And I'll sort of tell you what I see. I'm sure your viewers will have have their own comments and questions and thoughts behind some of the choices they've made. And it's really exciting to see a new class like this because the rate of change is so rapid. So this is American Magic. She was the first of the Boat 2 and the first of the Boat 1s to launch. What strikes me about this boat is how, clearly a huge focus on aerodynamics in minimizing that air drag. So we see much deeper crew cockpits. We see the center wedge now extending all the way out. Absolutely minimum area on the boats tapering out to the transom. The travelers above deck, and they're using a boom system on this boat as opposed to some of the others. Go to the next one, Tom.
Hey, hang on, Britt. Which do you like better? Do you like the boomless boats or the boomed boats?
Well, it's interesting. Originally, my thinking was the boom was going to be essential to be able to trim the sails appropriately. But looking at some of the video we'll show later of Team New Zealand in light air and how much depth they can punch into that mainsail to get it up and going with the boomless option is quite intriguing. So, all of them are trying to seal it to the deck to maximize, to lower that center of effort and maximize the efficiency of the rig and try to basically get it completely end plated. So there's not much difference in relating to the boom choice that way, but
so the end plating is equally good, you think, whether it's
I think so,
boom or boomless?
Yeah.
Okay, Julia. I know Stingray. Britt, did I forward you the question that Stingray had?
I don't think so.
Did I email to you? Julia, let's ask Stingray if he's watching to repeat in the comments the question you asked so that I don't have to go dig it out because I forgot to print it. If Stingray will do that. How about then this image also of American Magic? Bow down. Normally a little more heel to windward than this shot, Britt.
Yes, I think so. And there's some sense to heeling to windward. And I think the bow down as well. I think that's about, trying to minimize the load on the elevator, maximize the efficiency of your big foils forward. And then some of it's just trying to get an aerodynamic trim of the boat overall. That hull's contributing to lifting the total lift of the package, which it must be. This one you see the skeg, if you will, the keelson, and this is probably
to help guide me if I'm not pointing the right thing, but you're talking.
Yeah, I'm talking about the ridge on the bottom there.
Right.
And so,
what do you call? What's the best technical term for that?
I call it it's either a skeg or a keelson is what I call it, but people will call it bustles or other things. Theirs is probably the most minimalist of the 4 new boats in terms of the depth of that
Does
feature.
that mean conservative? Is this the most conservative of the 4 boats? Or is Luna Rossa the most conservative?
I think Luna Rossa may be the most conservative in some ways. I mean, in terms of that feature, they've taken a minimal approach on it. But there's a lot, I think.
Meaning the skeg or the keel set.
The skeg, yeah. But I think, a lot of work in the shear treatment to improve aerodynamics. There's a lot I like about this boat. I think it looks really fair. It looks like it'll go well in a range of conditions. And when I see things that are really forced, that to my mind often says that the boat's very focused on one condition and they're willing to give up things elsewhere. And what we all know about sailboat racing is it's never like that, right?
So you think this boat will be good across the range from 6.5 knots minimum, wind speed up to 22 in the Challenger Selection Series and 23 in the match?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've shown us repeatedly how well they can go uprange. So the real question is, in that light stuff, transitional takeoff, or are they paying a bigger wetted surface penalty or drag penalty compared to the other boats?
Are all the teams now, do they all have tiplets on the wings?
Yes.
And the bullet feature on the
No, and we'll go through. I'll point that out about each ones. But
shall I change slides?
Yeah, please go to the next one.
It's American Magic again.
Yeah,
their launch.
At their launch, and so they've probably got the biggest bulb feature. They're carrying anhedral on the wings, like.
Hang on, the bulb feature here.
Yes.
And
so there's
and the anhedral.
Yeah, so anhedral is the wingtips down.
The down.
So that angle, right? So, the rule has limits that they've got to honor, and so you could go deeper on that canting arm if you take out some anhedral on the foils and they make them straight, which is what.
So, in a nutshell, if the foils are flatter,
that's
okay. Yeah, they can go deeper with a foil arm.
And then your other rule is this whole bulb wing assembly has a weight requirement. So it's up to each team to decide what's the best treatment for that carrying lift over that junction drag, and how they're going to get the required amount of weight into that foil system. And so it's probably one of the biggest areas of difference across all the boats.
Yeah, the foils. Is this race going to be won by foils, or is it a bigger, wider package than that? Is it?
Well, again, I think it's ultimately when you're at speed, those foils that's what's in the water, and if you can control the boat well and not have to use excessive amounts of tabs and drag that way, then that's going to be a differentiating factor for sure. I think the question becomes then. You've got to take off, and if you take off incrementally faster than the other guy, then that could be a huge lead. Then the race is done. So that whole takeoff and touchdown solution, which is really hull related, is going to be important as well.
Will boats go as they did ultimately in Bermuda? Will they go 100% dry? Will they be able to sail the entire race, including the pre-start foil borne? If when we get to it in March?
From what I've seen, I think so. Yeah, I think they'll be able to go 100% dry. I mean, you've watched these teams do tacking drills. Short tacking drills.
Yeah, we're seeing the Brits do it. I've got a video of them doing a short tack in a second.
Fully foil borne. So I mean, it's certainly possible once you're up.
Before we forget, how do you think the pre-start will happen with this configuration? Is this just going to be one big Amy Vanderbilt? Is there going to be maneuvering against each other? They're going to sail away for a minute and turn and come back for the last minute. I think upwind. I'm not sure everybody realizes it's an upwind start this time.
Yeah, I think you have to think these guys are getting so good at time on distance that there's going to be a bias that way, because the risk that you get knocked out in the pre-start or left floundering in the water is going to be really pretty grave. I mean, it could be the differentiator in the race, I think. And I think, but you can see the importance of maneuverability in the shape of some of the rudders. I mean, clearly a bunch of the teams want more control area when it's really light and the boat's not flying, and that must be planning on maneuvering tightly.
What's the rule on swapping rudders?
Not certain what the rule. I'm sure there's a limit on the number you can have,
but you can have a couple, obviously, more than two, I'm sure. And you can swap for a bigger area rudder for some conditions and a smaller rudder probably for upwind, uprange, right?
And most of the difference seems to be in it's how much area you have in the rudders in the upper part of as it approaches the boat, right? And that's out of the water when you're foiling, so they're trying to get the best of both worlds.
Yeah, they're tapered so that the rudders, when they're in the water, the wider part is in the water, and as they then foil, and the little T-foils on the bottom of the rudder, that part of the rudder is pretty bloody small. Shall we switch?
You're going very fast. So, next one.
So while we're on speed, and Julia may have a question, while we're on speed, how fast are these things going to go, Britt?
I think some of them are already saying they've hit 50.
I've heard 55, by the way.
Yeah, and the limit is a cavitation limit, and it's going to be in that 55 knot zone. You go any faster than that, you need much smaller foils, but the smaller foils get highly loaded and the water cavitates. So that's kind of the upper limit these guys battle with.
Julia, do you have a pressing question?
There are several, actually.
Shoot.
Dogzilla is
Stingray up in Seattle.
Britt, do you think that since we see them sailing the foils so close to the surface that they may be attempting to base ventilate foil sections a la sail rockets foil?
No, I don't think no one's looking at sort of transcavity sections that can work that way, that generally look more wedge-like. I think that foil approaching the surface and then sometimes piercing the surface is about a few things. I think it's about maximizing your riding moment by getting the effective point of action of that foil as far to leeward as it can. That also lowers the boat closer to the surface, which helps that rig efficiency thing. And I think the faster you go, there's a desire to get a little more side force, and you don't need as much vertical force. So rather than using the tab to induce more lift or take off lift, if you cant the foil more, you just get a little less vertical component, which should give you less drag and maybe a little more side force more efficiently.
You've used the word. Go ahead, and then I want to ask you a question.
Apparently, it's certainly Team New Zealand believes this, and I've seen Magic in the same. They're willing to sacrifice a little drag for the surface piercing tip poking through the water for more efficiency on the other side of the equation.
Britt, you used the word tab twice.
Yeah.
You're talking about the trim tab on the trailing edge of the
foils.
Of the foils, right. And by rule, they're allowed only on the trailing edge.
Yes.
And one on each of the foils, the trailing edge of the foil. So there's 4 actually tabs, right?
Yes, there's 4, but I believe they're actuated together. They're not independent. It's my understanding on each side.
Okay. Julia?
There are several questions. What boat, in your opinion, has the greatest ground effect?
Well, let's not get too hang on to that question, Julia. Let Britt go through the rest of these slides and then ask any.
There are 5 questions that are here that are
all kind of relating to all the boats.
Yeah.
Okay, Britt, shouldn't we go through the rest of the slides?
Let's blast through the rest of them, and then we can answer questions.
Then we're gonna ask Britt who's going to win.
And he's going to tell us.
He's gonna
okay. So we got 3 more boats to go through here. So
okay, that's fair. So here we have GBR, Ineos B2.
Ineos 2,
what we're calling.
Yeah.
Well, shall we say it? Julie will shake her finger at me, Britt.
All right.
Yeah.
We're calling it Ben's Bulge.
Ben's bulge. Yep. All right. So
This thing's massive. I mean, were you as surprised as we were when we saw this thing? I mean, it's bloody massive.
I was surprised, and I've been sort of wrestling with the logic behind it. Besides, I mean, to get the aerodynamic effect of sealing the boat down to the water, I don't see why it has to be that wide. So now the question is, part of the idea of this hiding volume down there is that it's very low drag if it goes in the water. It's really long and slender, so you're managing.
Hang on. What do you mean by hiding volume? You're talking about some of the hull volume is down there. Some of the rule specific, rule required volume.
For the boat to float on its waterline, you need X amount of volume in everything under the water, right? So everyone's about the same.
Copy.
And so I think part of this, and this rule has every other America's Cup rules had what we call a no hollows rule. So we can't have an inflection in section or shape or anything, and we'd fare these hulls to the fraction of the millimeter to be straight and not have any hollows in it. But this rule doesn't have that restriction, so they're free to introduce all these distortions into the hull shape. And so my thinking is sort of twofold. Part of the reason for that skeg is as we talked about, an aerodynamic performance issue, to try to seal the boat to the water without drag. And I think
so that's end plating the hull. That's so that the air, again, for non-technologists, that's so that the wind, I will go back to the camera 4 here. So the wind on the windward side, the high pressure side, can't escape over here to the leeward side and help maintain that pressure difference, which helps generate drive forward, lift in the sails, right?
In an ideal world, if it was a perfect reflection plane, you'd get half the induced drag from the wing. And so it is an induced drag is a sizable piece of what's going on here. So any effort to do that helps. And they're also interested in getting the effective healing moment of the entire package as low as they can as well, because that's less riding moment you've got to generate on the foils.
Copy. How about the ride cushion? What about you want to talk about that now, or do you want to come?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think because this applies to all these boats with these features with how big they are, is because you've got this volume, we've got to hide it somehow. In transitional phases, as the boat's taking off, a very long, slender piece of volume is quite low drag compared to a big piece of wetted surface. So
both hydro and aero drag.
Yeah. So part of you're pushing volume down there, and that I think helps in those transitional takeoff modes. And so I think there's, again, how much focus there is on that transitional in takeoff and transition or touching down versus fully dry flight, and then hydrodynamic versus aerodynamic is influencing these things. I'm at a bit more of a loss as to the second bulge there. And I think a couple slides on, I've got a real close-up of it there as well.
And that's aft of the, whatever the station where the oil arms is, right?
Yes, it is.
You want me to move to the next one?
Yeah. Jump to next one down. We'll come back to this one.
Next one down.
Next one after this. Okay,
there it is.
So here you go. I don't know what these holes, vents are underneath the foil there, those black rectangles.
What was that in Hunt for Red October? That was
your magneto
something
hydrodynamic.
Right. Remember that, Julia?
Yeah.
The magneto hydrodynamic drive. So that's what those holes are?
No, I mean, I don't think they allow you to introduce air into the flow field. So, but I'm a bit of a loss, to be honest, at what those are.
There were questions before about the design of the O's on the upper part of that too.
Well, that's just Ineos's logo and make it harder to see what's going on with the hull, isn't it? It's a bit.
Yeah, I think so.
And
so I see some logic. I'm surprised at the flat corner on the keel, the hard flat bottom on it, because I don't think you're in a sort of planing condition very often.
This thing right here.
Yeah,
that chine on Ben's bulge.
Yeah, and that is quite interesting, and that's quite unique to this boat. Everyone's got this feature to some extent, but they're the only ones that have got it that wide and that pronounced.
A friend of mine in Annapolis told me when I called him to see if he'd come on the show, saying, I've never seen a fish or an airplane that has a hard surface. Some sailboats where they built them in wood, the Star and the Lightning and the Snipe and so on, you have a hard chine, but you wouldn't normally find that in nature. Is that what you said?
Yeah, generally. I think that's, if you're trying to, sometimes a hard corner is of value if you're trying to shed a vortex. And so that may be what they're attempting to do, is to make it a hard corner to shred it. But that can also be a very steady state phenomena and sort of requires the boat to be operating at a very precise design point, which I'm not sure you can really achieve with sailboats.
Now, Britt, Stingray, AK, here on YouTube, he's Dogzilla Monster. You know what, Julie? You know what Dogzilla is? I'll take Britt off.
I'm on a cartoon.
No, you see that boat,
Yeah.
that trimaran from 2010 was nicknamed by Stingray Dogzilla.
Oh, it was.
Dogzilla Monster. So he's the one who came up with that name. And so that's why he calls himself on here. But here's his question, Britt. He's saying, in fact, it's not a question. He's been reading and talking to people as well. He's a very bright, as you know who he is, Stingray, right up in Seattle. He's the Boeing engineer, software coder guy, but he's also, one of the smartest people I know in the sport. He hasn't sailed a lot lately, but he sailed collegiately at University of Washington with the McKee brothers and others, and he's just a very smart, savvy guy. He says these holes on Britannia are supposed to be their water bailers, but there's a chance they're also aero-related, serving dual purposes. What do you think of that?
They could be bailers.
These holes.
And I'll be honest,
Magneto-hydrodynamic.
I didn't have a chance to look through the rule on this, but every America's Cup rule I've ever read has restrictions on altering the boundary layer, right? The anti-riblet rule.
Yes.
And so I'm surprised you would be able to eject air, even if it's just a result of having bailers there, out and not fall foul of that. So I believe there's another purpose to these that I'm not aware of yet. But
okay, well, that'll be fun to find out. How's this boat? Well, let's not get into performance yet. So you want me to back up? You want to stay here?
Yeah, go the one previously. Let's just talk about this. So I think this sort of shows them sailing in this low mode, getting that keel right down to the water. It's got that sort of bow down trim, which seems to be an advantage aerodynamically, and I think on fore and aft balance, carrying more load into the front foils. I'm surprised the skeg, if you will, stops a chord length forward of the rudder. I would have thought you'd run it straight into that. So I think that's kind of interesting back there. Yeah, that big space.
Why do you think? I mean, that wasn't a design mistake. It must have been intentional.
That was a choice. But it surprises me because I would have thought you would have tried to just almost pair them together, which
every boat we've ever seen that has a skeg, and that a skeg is technically that part. I've looked it up. It's and the aft part of a boat. You wouldn't normally call this hang dangly thing a skeg. You'd call it something else. But for sure, there are a lot of boats that have skegs, big boats and small, and they go right to the rudder.
Yeah.
So why is that? Why did they stop it?
I don't know.
But there must be a reason, right? They didn't do that on purpose. I mean, it's not a design. It's not just an oversight.
Well, they must have done the analysis, and their methods are saying that there's either a drag savings or it's just not paying its way in terms of weight and drag. It's not worth having there, I guess. And they're more worried about getting it near the end of the rig. So, the other thing you notice about this, I think these wings are really big. These double anhedral foils, and they're unique. They're the only ones of the four that have tried this, and they're, I think, quite complicated, courtesy of Mercedes F1 design, I believe. I think the next slide, two down, has a close up on the foils. There you go. So they've got a similar small bulb treatment there, but you can see that
Here,
actuating
let me
actuating
take
the,
you out of the picture here, Brett.
actuating the flaps on the angle there across that angle is a pretty significant engineering challenge. So
You mean
see it?
up here where there's
Yeah.
the angle
There's-
and getting the
yeah.
flaps? Do the flaps have to work together on the
I believe-
on the
yeah,
angle? They can't be separate, right? There can only be one adjustable flap
Yes.
on each foil.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's quite complicated on that side. And interesting, they've been sailing recently. You can't quite see it in that lower picture, but the other one's just a straight anhedral foil on the other side of the boat. So they haven't made up their mind what.
You mean
what's the right?
this one is straight, so that's on the port side of the boat, and that presumably is on the starboard side, or
No,
was.
I think those are all just. Yeah, those are close-ups of it. But in the big
Are they
picture,
all the same?
but yeah, those,
But in this one, you're saying here
yeah,
these are
that one
straight. Got it.
just
So
straight
on the port side, they're straight.
Yeah.
And on the starboard side, you can see the inflection that Britt's talking about here. Okay.
Yeah.
What
Okay.
about these bits underneath here? What about this bit right here?
Well, I think that's part of the hinge mechanism, but it's also acting as a bit of a boundary layer fence. I
The
think
fence.
just to
There's the
keep the flow going.
aerodynamics to help to regularize. Is that a good word? Regularize the flow
Yeah.
across the foil. You see that
That's a good
on airplane wings, right? You see that.
Yeah.
The little fences they're called. They're just little strakes or fences. I guess strake is another word that means something else.
And you see it all on the Yamoka 60 foils too. They've all got fences all the way down them to try and keep the flow.
Yeah, are these the most complex foils?
I think so. I think that foil is the most complex. Anyway,
Okay.
all right. So the next one is Luna Rosa boat 2, which
What? Maybe we stop there, Julie. Are there any specific questions about Britannia before we go to Luna Rosa, or have we missed any about American Magic?
Well, there are a bunch of questions, but if you want to wait.
Okay, we'll keep going, and then we'll go back and answer the questions. That's fair. Okay, Britt, you're
okay. So this boat, and it's hard to read at night, and these boats always look incredible. Every boat, every Luna Rosa that's ever been built looks the part, and matte black is really hard to read the shape and try to read differences. Clearly, they felt they got it about right with their first boat, and so this boat is an evolution rather than a big departure. As their first boat, it's got that skeg that runs all the way back. In this case,
their skeg goes all the way to the rudder.
All the way to the rudder, and the rudder, you notice, has big cord up top. It's quite tapered to give them that extra area in low-speed maneuvering. So it's a very clean shape, and to my mind, it will react very well to varying conditions because it's not going to get pushed sort of out of a very tight operating envelope. The question is whether that's fast all the time. It's the question of having a nice flat optimum or a very pointed one, and what the difference is there. But my sense, a lot of the shaping of this boat looks to me like it's going to be good all round. Not dissimilar to American Magic in that style that I think it's got. Their foils on this one have changed from their first boat. First boat had a bulb style appendages. They've still got anhedral with the wingtips, but they've managed to put all the weight into the foils and get rid of the bulb junction. I think the next slide down is some close-ups on their foils. Yeah, so you can see the wingtips there. These foils they've mounted well forward, and that's an effort to try to
on the foil arm.
And that's an effort to try to separate the two boundary layers and minimize the junction drag. And you see this even in sort of moth foils and things like that, where you're trying to separate the two interacting boundary layers to minimize the junction drag, which is a reasonable portion of the drag. Let's see. So yeah,
pretty simple, pretty straightforward. What are you hearing about structural problems or issues with this team and this boat? I know they had some earlier on with their other boat.
Yeah, I haven't heard any issues on this one, but again, today it was blowing in the 20s and they weren't out there, so I think
the other two teams, so ETNZ and Magic, were out.
Magic. So,
what are the foil arms made of? What are the foils made of?
Well, I believe the foil arms are carbon, and there was a whole bunch of work done. They were all one design parts supplied, at least the structural spar inside the fairing, built by Persico. And then the lower portions, I believe, in most cases, are from milled steel. Again, this whole end of the foil arm has to meet this minimum weight requirement. So you can play a game. I guess you could build carbon foil arms, but you're going to have to put the weight somewhere else, in a bigger bulb or something, and pay a drag penalty for that. So it's about, finding the best hydrodynamic performance, but also achieving this while achieving this weight constraint.
Okay. Anything else on Luna Rossa? Simple, straightforward. Should perform well, you think, in a wide range of conditions, but maybe not. How about getting out of the water? The shape getting lift off.
I think it's. I'm kind of a fan of the fair shape and thinking that's got to be lower drag trying to get out of the water, but my thinking may have been altered on that after looking at some of the next stuff on Team New Zealand. So,
Were you as surprised as I was and everybody else by the shape of this boat and the departure from their B1 and B1.5, their 12-meter test boat?
Initially I was, and my first thought was they'd plucked features of all the other boats that had come before it and tried to employ them together in a package. And so I started thinking, what's driving each of these features?
Take us through the features that you think and which ones came off the other boats.
Well, the stem, and of course it didn't happen that way because they were all being designed at the same time. But, their skeg, if you will, fares really nicely into the stem of the boat, much like American Magic, and they've got that flare forward. So, sort of below that upper chine line, there's some similarities there between what Magic's got and this boat. The back of the boat looks like a box, which looks like Ineos Boat 1, and that is quite interesting, I think.
Except that it doesn't go straight back and then down. They've fared.
Right. She's fared, and it's fair in plan view as well as profile, and that's about reducing aero drag.
And this skeg Kielsen fares up into the hull. It also doesn't go all the way back to the rudder.
It reduces in depth, but the rudder's actually mounted in it.
Oh, it is?
It tapers away, but the rudder's actually sitting in the skeg. So the skeg, in some ways it's got similarities to Ineos. I mean, it's quite a lot of volume in there, but it's quite doesn't have a hard chine along it at all, which I think is quite. Again, this is about aero versus hydro and what are you trying to achieve with it. But and then I was quite just noticing today that the bowsprit looks very minimalist, and then you put that together with this video we'll watch from Gilles of the 5-knot takeoff of this boat that was done without the code 0 on it, and I wonder if they're even going to put a code 0 on it or whether that bowsprit's just for wind instruments.
Do they have by rule? Do they have to have a bowsprit?
I think you have to have a bowsprit, but you don't have to have the sail. But if you don't have the sail, you have to pay for it. You have to carry the weight equivalent on board, so it's not a freebie by any means.
You have to carry a code 0 on board.
Yeah, or the weight equivalent.
Okay.
You don't have to fly it. So, so very deep crew cockpits that are isolated. I think.
Can't see it on this one.
This one helps though, but that next one does show you that, unlike all the other boats, the crew cockpits are isolated and they've got the deck enclosed behind the cockpits, and I think that's trying to get the flow reattached around the crew compartments and coming back off the boat, and then sort of
meaning these shapes here.
Yeah, those shapes there.
Did you see what they're calling this? They say this is part of this. They call it the spillway, and the reason that they've gone to this shape in part, they said, was to get the water that comes inevitably over the bow and spills out. Is that bullshit, or is that?
I think that's the story. I think it's all about getting that mainsail down and mainsail foot as low as absolutely possible.
So you think that makes sense?
Yeah. You're not going to win races.
The main.
If you've got water pouring over the front there, you're not winning races.
You got bigger problems then.
Yeah. Let's see.
Okay, so now you can see here, you were talking about how the rudder actually, this thing goes behind the rudder. We're calling this Grant's Grundle, by the way.
There have been questions about where that
Grant's
came from.
Grundle. Somebody named it. One of our Fozy named it. Was it Gordon Smith or was it somebody? What do you think of Grant's Grundle? I had to go double check when I told you what I knew as a kid of what a Grundle was.
Yeah.
I had to go look it up in the Urban Dictionary.
Were you right?
I was right. You know what a Grundle is, right, Britt?
No, he doesn't.
Huh?
I do not.
Well, the polite word is perineum.
Okay.
So we got Ben's bulge in Grant's Grundle. Or another less polite word is taint.
Yes.
Taint your.
I've never heard that.
Oh, you can't? You never heard the song "Taint Misbehavin'"?
Oh,
it's getting to be too much like Sailing Anarchy here, Britt. Sorry, but back to the shape. So we got Grant's Grundle that comes right back.
Yeah, and the rudder's mounted in the back there, and then they've got like Kielsen Inception going because they've got another little one sticking out of the big one.
this little doodad right down the middle of Grant's Grundle.
Yeah.
And I think they must be trying to. It must be an aerodynamic game to try to.
It's a long fence.
Get off, but keep it aligned.
To keep the airflow aligned over that bulbous, that protuberance. Anything else in this photo?
I think that's. You can see the really recessed traveler mechanism. All their deck hardware is just beautifully fair. There's just nothing above. So there's a huge effort on minimizing aero drag on this boat.
Okay. Nice RNZ Burgee right there in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So what's the next one?
Okay, here's the GMR. Do you want to run this video now?
Yeah. So he posted this, and this sort of made me think about a lot of features. So let's watch it, and then I'll talk about what I'm seeing.
We can watch it again if you want. So you think this is real time? You don't think this is slow mode at all?
I think it's real time.
So this is
5 knots of wind.
They look like they're grinding real time. Looks slow through the water to me, but maybe not.
Yeah, but within, this video is not very long, and they're going to be fully in the air by the end of it. So
they don't look slow mode in the cockpit. Nice dramatic music. The bullet noses on their fins. The fin bulbs.
Yep, they have a bulb.
Both sides.
Yep, both sides. Both sides identical. I think. Now you see the main absolutely sealed to the deck there. No boom. Look at the depth in this mainsail because it's boomless. So there's a lot of power being introduced there.
In the bottom.
Yeah. And the boat.
You want me to stop it?
Yeah, stop it there. So the boat's just heeling over enough that you've got this full skeg in the water and that volume is holding it. But the bottom on the leeward side is barely pressurized. So she's like riding on that bilge, And all the stories are, the real challenge with these machines is you're going from very limited amount of stability in the boat to way too much stability in the blink of an eye, right? So that's the nature of a dynamic stability system here. So in that transition, part of what this chine is doing, I think, is it's getting them a fair bit of form stability in this takeoff mode while trying to minimize the amount of wetted surface they're paying for it. And I think perhaps that's a big difference between this treatment and what Ineos Boat 1 was, is they had this big flat bottom the whole time and the volume wasn't being supported by the volume in the skeg.
So say that all again. This big flat ass bottom back here and and pretty much a hard chine.
Yeah, so all she has to
say
do
that
is
again is helping to support
it's giving some form stability at a time when you need it,
which is in the launch
phase. And it's trying to do it while paying a minimum amount of wetted surface, I think.
And minimum amount of drag, aero drag once you're launched?
Yes.
Okay. So can we run the video some more? Or?
Yeah, you can run the video to the end. It's almost...
There you can really see the depth of the main.
Yeah.
And now they're launched.
Right.
Bravo Zulu to Gilles Martin-Raget. We're really now going to see some fabulous stuff. Gladwell's pictures have been terrific.
Yeah.
And now...
So this thing, that was a 5, they say 5 knots of wind they were taking off, and they did not deploy a code 0 when they did that, which I thought was quite interesting. So so that was my thinking, that hiding the volume in the bottom helps, and that getting that bilge out there has been pretty precisely positioned to give it a little stability help when it needs it in takeoff.
I have another photo.
Yeah.
Just from, I don't know if that's from the breezy today, Tuesday the 24th. It's, of course, Wednesday down there now. But anything in this photo that's interesting?
Well, the foils are quite interesting, and they're unique as well. So, like I said, these basically have zero anhedral.
They're flat.
Flat.
Yeah.
They've got that bulbous area to try to get this volume requirement, but they're flat, and they look very long span to my eye compared to the others, and I don't know if that's deceiving or not. And that being flat lets them get a little longer on the canting arm, and I think one of the pictures I had earlier, maybe it's not here. Yeah.
You want me to go back?
Yeah, my last slide.
Before the video?
Yeah, I think so. That's the one that has the foil in the cradle.
Okay. This one right here.
Yeah, okay. So you can see two interesting things. So we've got this very flat, like zero anhedral foil with some slight wingtips with the bulb. But because the foil arm can be deeper here without the anhedral, this is much more wasted away around the junction. So that's going to minimize their junction drag coming into that bulb. And again, you've got an attempt to separate the boundary layers from the strut and the foil wings themselves.
By having them so far aft, you mean?
Yeah. And it's just a different attempt. I mean, Luna Rossa put it on the front trying to do the same sort of game. They're the only ones that have this extra cord added at the bottom of the keel arm fairing. That little bulge. And I think that's really, that piece is designed
this
to act.
Piece?
Up just above it.
This piece.
That piece there.
This piece.
So that, I think, is about trying to pull the spray sheet off the foil and reduce spray drag. Now, I haven't seen enough video of it to see how well it's doing, but
at high speeds.
Yeah,
in the
but
upper
I think that's what they're trying to do with that.
Well, yeah. There's some comments. Can Britt please comment on the foil arm extensions just below the curve? Meaning, I guess, this part.
Yes. Well, as I say, I think that because theirs is longer because of the zero anhedral, they can waste it away.
Zero anhedral, meaning the flat.
They're flat foils.
Yeah, flat
means
foils.
The distance of that foil end is a bit longer on this boat than the others, and that lets them waste this thing away a bit more on Team New Zealand than on the other boats.
Are these foils longer? Are these higher aspect ratio foils than the other teams?
They seem to me. I mean, visually I think they look quite a bit substantially longer than,
They do to my eye as well.
Different positioning than Ineos, for instance. It's kind of glaring. So,
one other question, Britt. What are these? Are those telltales? What's that? Yeah, and let me go back to the photo close up. They look like, at least on my big screen here when it's blown up, they look like telltales on the side of the hull.
They could be. I mean,
can't see
zoom in on myself to see it here. Yeah, they do look like there's telltales along the wall there.
Yeah, along the wall.
Well, that'd be good information.
Fantastic.
Just confirming the flow's going where they think it is down there. So,
what else? John Emmett made an interesting point here. I cannot see people using, and others have made the same or similar comment, I cannot see people using a code zero, just because if you get any breeze at all, if the breeze comes up, a knot or two, you're going to be screwed with a capital F, right?
I think that's very true, and I think even as we saw it in the AC50s, I think the logic still applies that yes, you get more power from more area, but you also pay more aerodynamic drag, and it may be that the crossover is so slight that it's not worth going there.
Exactly. Well, and as we've had the question, well, are you going to change jibs during a race? And there's no way. Just no way. It's just not.
They're not even changing sides, let alone changing sails.
Is that true now? Are all the teams staying on their respective sides? They're not switching around behind the main, or I guess they really can't.
I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen it. We haven't seen them in action, but it's hard for me to see that getting out of these cockpits, especially, is going to be something they're going to do too regularly.
Britt, it's 2:30 here, 14:24, almost 2:30. So it's 5:30 your time. You okay? You're at home, so you don't have to drive through the traffic. And can we carry on and show you a video here of Ineos that was shot today, the 24th? It's again the 25th down. Oh, yes, sorry, it was the 23rd by Airflow NZ, which is another new friend down there in New Zealand who is shooting a lot of great videos. And I don't know if you've seen this. I don't think I showed you more than a second of it in the tech check. But I must say, I'm amazed at how stable, how good all the teams have become, relatively good and stable on these new boats. How important is the computer software going to be to the success of these teams?
I think that is a question, and I've heard people wonder if some people are sailing with autopilot assist.
Just for training, because it's not
training
legal
purposes, and to teach themselves what's the right way versus actually running full manual flight control. But I would agree with you; they all seem remarkably stable.
Because when they do get into it in the racing, there has to be a human that is controlling the ride height and is controlling the flaps, as you call them.
Yes.
And it can't be a computer. It can't be fly-by-wire. Can't be a computer that's doing it. And of course, that was true in Bermuda. It was true in San Francisco, rather. But the human can be quickly replicating what he's seeing on a screen, on a readout from the computer, and then just has to be the person making the manual adjustments that are then, again, electronic. Got to have the human in the chain.
That's right.
I'm going to stop this. Again, these are just amazing looking, these in particular, the Brits. Foils.
Yeah, that one, but I'm struck by how big they look area-wise compared to what Team New Zealand has. you know, and generally a lot of area that's a source of drag, so it's quite. And again, maybe they have light air set and a heavy air set in their race sets. I don't know how they're developed their quiver for the match, but
you can see their rudder is radically tapered.
Yes. Yeah.
More so, I think, than any of the other teams, isn't it? You think New York's is the same?
New York's is quite aggressive, and Luna Rossa too. But yeah, boats are incredibly stable. Although that's some of they're flying quite high.
Yeah, I think this is. Excuse me, but go ahead. You were saying they're flying quite high.
Yeah, it strikes me how high they're flying, given often we see an idea with the skeg is to be close to the water, not in it.
Yeah. They seem to be well, I haven't seen much of Luna Rossa. We just haven't seen much of Luna Rossa. And of course, Luna Rossa, after they launched, went back in the shed. Shed and added that skeg, that keelson, to the boat. They were a week in the shed or nearly so, right?
I think so, yeah. They haven't been out there, and so now it's going to count time on the water.
We're almost an hour and a half in. If you're just joining us, we're very pleased to have Britt Ward live via Skype from the Far Yacht. Well, not the Far Yacht Design Office. He's at his home near the Far Yacht Design Office in beautiful Annapolis, Maryland, one of the spiritual hearts of sailing in this country. Some would say along with Newport, Rhode Island, along with San Diego, perhaps maybe Julia, maybe San Francisco.
Yes.
But a spiritual heart because of the America's Cup, because of all the nautical and naval architecture and boat building facilities in Annapolis. Delighted to have you with us, Britt. Thanks again. And let's now look at the heavy air pictures, courtesy of Richard Gladwell, that these are from today, Tuesday the 24th, that he just published today, went down in Auckland, Wednesday the 25th. And as you said, these were the only two teams out.
Yeah. So
there's this one, and that's breezy. That's north of 18, 19 knots, right? Maybe north of 20.
North of 20, maybe, yeah.
Looking at the surface of the water. And then we've got these shots. ETNZ was the other team out besides American Magic.
Yeah, and so here you really see this low flight mode.
Yep.
And the leeward cant arm, it seems to be canted up a bit, which helps get the boat down, but it also, I think, generates more stability because it puts the center of effort of the leeward foils further away.
Further outboard.
And they're going fast, so they don't need as much lift off those foils. So
here may be the most interesting photo to me of the whole lot.
Fascinating, isn't it? Yeah, so you really see that really shows the spillway, if you will, back.
Yeah, one of the questions is, can you really identify the influence of Airbus and Mercedes in their design choices?
I think having worked in some of these teams and how an organization like that feeds into it, I think they can be quite different, So I certainly think
you wouldn't be talking about the Oracle 2000.
Well, I've talked to people
we were on together
in these teams as well. It's just first of all, it can be quite a different. It's a different. The time scales are so short that trying to bring in a bunch of external knowledge and bring it in can be very difficult. And if you do it well, I think you can make a big leap. I mean, certainly Mercedes has really helped in their design and their ability to process and simulate things and bring a lot of that Formula One side of life to it. And engineering those foils, for instance, is clearly that's a very detailed, fine-tuned job. So there's no doubt there.
That is a really good point. And of course, I'm not a technician, but I've sat through design meetings since God knows when. and have learned by osmotically anyway a lot of this. But I've seen I am a process person, and I've seen the processes in these teams. And one thing I can say, Britt, is having been involved in Formula One and involved in the old days of the America's Cup, the towing tank, and even the pre-CFD days, and now the CFD days, and now where towing tanks are not even legal, and the F1 involvement. There's one big process difference, and that is that the F1 guys are always looking forward to the next season.
Yes.
They got another season. They got the next season. So they can try things, they can do things. If that doesn't work, well, we can make some adjustments between the races. But, we can make some adjustments between the races. Here, that's like a political campaign. You either win or you lose. You don't know if there is a next time, as you well know. And I think watching that mentality among non-yacht racing designers coming into teams is a very interesting thing to see and watch.
It's a massive management exercise, and I think how you merge those to leverage the strengths of all those different parts of an organization is a huge challenge, and shouldn't be undersold.
Julia.
Dogzilla says, what makes the AC-75 such upwind monsters, and do they crab?
Upwind monsters to sail. Britt. Do they crab?
Well, I mean,
of course they do, right?
Yeah, there must be generating leeway. And we don't have. I mean, we have the trim tabs on the flaps, and I think that's all sort of intertwined into how you adjust the cant arm and the foil angles, both for vertical flight, but also, your windward performance. I think basically you've got just this massive amount of riding moment that you're generating with that foil so far to leeward, and this very efficient sail plan, and no drag, and all those things are recipes for going fast,
As an aside, the question is asked, where did the word Dogzilla come from? And Dogzilla is deed of gift, right?
Yeah, that's this boat up here again, the trimaran below Britt there in this shot, and Stingray called it. There was Godzilla from what were those movies? Well, the Godzilla movies,
right?
And then he said, well, this is the Dogzilla because it's the deed of gift.
Yeah.
Instead of G-O-D, it's D-O-G, and he named it Dogzilla, and it's stuck.
Yeah.
And that's that trimaran with which we won the Cup, Oracle, whatever we were called then, BMW Oracle Racing, in 2010. That was an exercise. Britt, Julia?
Hamish Ross asked, Britt, what features would you take from each yacht for your own design?
Okay, now we get into the compare and contrast.
Well, I think as I was, looking at this Team New Zealand boat, I feel like in every little place they have just pushed a little bit harder right now. There's a lot, all these little details on the foil junctions. It just looks like it's, they've decided what they want, and they've gone to get every little piece of it they could in every little area.
In a nutshell, have they thrown the ball further? They like to say that they like to, as they did with the Cyclores, for example, but it was way more than the Cyclores. What they did in Bermuda with that boat, without going into the details, they really did throw the design ball further and then chased after it. Have they done that here?
On balance, I think they have. I think they've just pushed a little bit harder in every sector.
So what's your overall take? Not to put any pressure on you.
I think we all knew at the beginning with a class that the Defender helped generate that they were going to be tough to beat. They've always been on the front edge of it, and they had the tool systems and they had everything in place. So, but in the end, it is a boat race, So I'm quite favorable with. I think American Magic looks pretty good, and that all that time in the boat is really worth something. I think they could be really up there and competitive. I'm not sure I think Ineos has really tried to make a leap, and I think there's a question of whether they might have pushed it too far.
Stingray, just an aside, back on Ineos for a sec, he's saying something that the likes of Mercedes and Airbus, which of course Airbus is a sponsor of
Magic,
of American Magic, New York Yacht Club's team, something that the likes of Mercedes and Airbus can bring is access to massive computer processing resources. Is that really an issue these days? I mean, ETNZ must have access to massive computing power, so too Luna Rossa. What about that is question one, and then question two is what about the 5G connection that supposedly, have you heard anything about ETNZ's ability to do real time? And this is what, of course, the Formula One teams do from the car to, it used to be just to the pit wall, and then it was from the car to the pit wall to the engineers in the garage. And then even before I was gone from F1, the F1 scene, active scene, back in the early 2000s, the data was going real time from the car through the garage back to the HQ and coming back. And they had engineers and massive amounts of processing computer analysis power because of that. And of course, when you're doing that, you have to have a massively good data connection, which 5G is going to bring, and supposedly ETNZ has such a connection. Are you hearing anything about
I've heard they're running real time off the boat from all the hundreds of sensors over a 5G link. And
is anyone else doing that?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, I think that's certainly the level up. Oracle was there last time. They were pushing very hard at live, putting all the data straight into databases for analysis. And I think even the GP boats, the 50s they're streaming off a whole bunch of data now too. So, I mean, and it relates sort of that computer question. I think, we all can get mountains of CPU hours on, Amazon Elastic Cloud. So always the question is, can you get enough data, and are you asking the right questions and simulating it the right way to get the answers? And that's really the design of the experiments, and the use of the data is still the hard point. And it doesn't matter if it's a tank test result or a wind tunnel result or a computational experiment. The amount of data you require to predict the performance of the boat is massive, and generally you can't get enough of it. And if you've started in the wrong place, or if you ask the wrong question, it doesn't matter how long you spend.
Or if your software is bad.
Yeah.
An Ineos software guy recently, this is again Stingray, aka Dogzilla Monster, an Ineos software guy recently said they receive on the order of 1 billion data points each sailing day. 1 billion. Some of the 6D analyses run for weeks. Is that possible? They said it.
It's entirely possible, depending on what frequency they're pulling stuff from the sensors. If you're sampling at 100 hertz off X number of sensors, you could go through the roof, which is great. But then you've got to process it and try to draw a conclusion from it, which is, and that's the problem, is they can only measure against themselves, right? Because we're not allowed to race anyone else, and so.
Kilo 5 is saying, don't forget to congratulate Britt on the launch of his new 105-footer.
Yes.
Tell us about your new Far Yacht Design 105.
Yeah, we've got a few. We've been building some 105-footers down at Southern Wind Yachts in Cape Town. So we've got another one of those coming out shortly. I think that'll be the 4th one in the series. So that's been pretty exciting. Sort of blue water cruisers. And so we've got those going on. And then our 142-foot DSS boat won the World Super Yacht Award, so that was a big sailing yacht of the year. Won that this week, so that was.
I didn't hear that. Thing. Congratulations!
So some exciting things happening there.
I know it's not one of your boats, but the J9 is starting to this new Johnstone boat, J-Boat's boat, which is a very simple, very very minimal. You talked about minimalistic, and not to comment on that boat, but is that the trend in the sport given the pandemic and what people are learning from the pandemic? Simple boats like that? double-handed boats?
I
Families?
think double-handed is the future, and even ignoring the Olympics, that's I've been working flat out on this new 30-footer we've got coming, the FAR X2 that's going into production, and the interest we're seeing around the world for that is astounding. But that's more on the performance side. So
What's the FAR X2 looking like, and where are you building it, and when does it come to market?
It's being built at XSP in Singapore.
Mm-hmm.
They've built our Plateau 25s over the years, and 49ers and 29ers and all sorts of things. And the first boats we're hoping in the water in March in Australia. The first 4 boats have been sold. The second one's going to owner in Canada, and the interest is just flying off the. It's really
that's exciting.
Yeah, no, it's really a lot of fun. It's a little 30-footer glass boat with plenty of green water protection, ready to go Cat 1, so you can go in the city of Hobart in it.
It is Cat 1.
Yep. Oh, cool. It's going to have has life raft locker built in, has 250 liters of water ballast aside. So it's really exciting, but to see it come together. You can check it out at farx2.com.
Good.
Oh, we will. Yeah.
We will. Okay, one last chance. You and I spent a lot of time together, and with Bruce Farr and others during these now, I don't know how many campaigns we did together, actually. But talking about the sport, talking about the America's Cup, is this a good development for the Cup? What do you think? Are we inevitably going to be in these kinds of boats, foiling monohulls or similar going forward? Or do you think if New York wins, will they really bring it back to some sort of a box rule, 75 or 80 big sport boat in effect? And what's best for the sport?
Well, I think those are some quite different things. I think it's going to be really hard to put the genie back in the bottle now.
Yeah.
I don't. But whether it's the right thing for the sport, I think is it's hard to see the trickle down of this. We see the injuries we're already getting in the NACRAs or
even foiling windsurfers and
So thinking this is going to be an everyman thing, I think is a bit hard to get to. And part of that is, the reason we can achieve these incredible performance with these boats is because we have all these modern manufacturing techniques and materials and all these things that let us build really super light, strong things. But those things have big dollars associated with them too, and so I think that sort of is what precludes it from everyman side of life.
I think the one thing, whatever we do going forward for the Cup, we need more teams. The idea that there are only 3 or 4 teams, I think, limits the number of countries involved, limits the number of eyeballs, limits the number of professional sailors, and so on. And I hope whatever we do going forward, whoever wins it, and I do think, I agree with you, and I don't hesitate to say, I do hope that New York wins it and brings it back and regularizes, takes it back to some kind of a big, fast monohull, and we get 10 or 12 teams from 6 or 7 countries. John Emmett says we can't put the genie back in the bottle. We won't it's just this foiling thing is too fun and too fast. And Peter Stevenson down in Australia is probably watching Pedro Foiling Sailor. Pedro, I didn't get the name of the OK Dinghy sailor who's lost at sea. That we'll report on that on Friday. That's sad news.
I think, it's funny. You think about the event and what the event means. 1987 for me was pivotal in my career, watching all those boats. And
people don't realize you're an Aussie. You've been living in the States for so long. I usually put AUS/USA.
Yeah, both of them up there. Yeah. So I grew up in Fremantle, and I watched those boats race from my backyard, and I could pick out their spinnakers, and good luck doing that now, right?
Right. That's too bad.
They were on the horizon sailing very long courses, but I could follow them with a telescope from my backyard, and the number of challenges and that were there made it an incredible event. And I think that part of the event was didn't matter that it was 12 meters or, so.
Yeah, and there was a relatability to it. Clark Chapin saying speed costs money. How fast would you like to go? Steve Ross says these are just landfill boats. Kealoha 5, I'm not sure the real name of Kealoha 5. Have we learned that?
Nope.
Maybe they'll put their name, he or she. Prohibitively expensive. So I don't know. I don't know. Here's the problem I think we also have is that when you look like RoboCops, and John Emmett is saying the high performance boats drive technology and injury prevention. Look at the headgear and the cut-proof suits. Okay, John, but I think for the sailing and non-sailing crowd, the TV crowd, I think they'd rather see the 1977. Their idea is Ted Turner and Gary Jobson and co. and the Australia 2 crew in 1983, and all of those teams sailing in Frio. Okay, they had in 87, they all had foul weather gear on because it was windy and rough out off in the Gage Roads there, off where you grew up. But it was relatable to what all the rest of us do in sailing, and especially the shorts and the topsiders. Okay, that'd be topsiders. Nobody wears topsiders today except at cocktail parties. But the idea of a polo shirt and shorts, okay, maybe it's modern material, it's not cotton, but that's what people relate to. And the ability to see people, see their physique, men and women, see their face and not be looking like RoboCops, I think really is a turnoff for a lot of people. Julia? Britt?
I mean, I think we this is as you said, whether it's the J9 or other things, we've got to bring people into the sport. And I think whether it's a sporting event or an aspirational one that draws people in is a good question. When we did the Volvo 65, we actually, a lot of the early design discussions involved talking to photographers and video people about what they wanted to see, and they wanted to see people on wet, and they wanted to on deck getting wet.
They wanted to see water coming over the bow and being in a fire hose of. I use that word too many times in this show, but right? You were told to design boats that look
wet. It was very important that they, be in the elements, and I think, and even, Ace America's Cup Version 5 boats, we had to have the winches above the deck, and you had to have people above the deck, and that's all gone away with these things. So there could be any number of people sailing one of these boats. You don't even see them. I'm not sure
Wet Hog is saying, and he's a neighbor of yours, or I think he's in Annapolis or in the immediate area. He's saying a version of the TP52. Yeah, that's why I say a box rule 75 or 80 that could have a second life after the Cup is what the Cup should head towards if NYYC wins. Well, who knows? The problem is, Britt and Julia, is that whoever wins says, oh, we have an advantage. So we ought to keep that advantage. And the sailors and the designers start saying, we ought to keep that advantage. So let's stick with this class. And changing classes is hard. But as the other thing that, as Britt will tell you, is that anytime there's a new class, witness 1992, there's one team that's got a big advantage. And if this one is close, I hope it is. I don't care, I don't care who wins as much as I hope the racing is really close and compelling. But it's not usually in the cards.
Some conversation about that people want to see boats racing like wind, where in the
Wow. They want to see a love story between Jennifer Grey, and what was in Matthew Modine.
Matthew Modine, right? Yeah.
Okay, Brett, we've kept
put up the Whomper.
Fog, it seems to me that Bruno T is still a bit of a Whomper. Yeah, put up the Whomper. There are no Whompers in this AC. And you don't think there's even going to be any code zeros in this one. A lot of our foes are agreeing with you.
I think it's going to be depending on the day, but I think it quite likely. So
Jonathan Frank has just said that's what makes F1 more attractive than closed cockpit sports cars. You can see, he's shouting in caps, you can see the drivers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bring back the Whomper. Okay, guys, I think we've kept Britt for a couple hours here.
Yeah, and lots of compliments on your presentation and knowledge today, too.
Good. I hope people enjoyed it. It was
Indeed.
fun.
It's been great. I really appreciate it. If you are joining us, we had Britt Ward on live via Skype from Annapolis. He's what's your title, Senior Naval Architect?
Senior Naval Architect and Vice President of Far Yacht Design.
Of Far Yacht Design in Annapolis, Maryland. Longtime friend. We've done a few campaigns together, and I really, as I'm sure everyone on here, Britt, I really appreciate your expertise today. When can we get you back on?
We'll try not to make it a year this time. Huh?
That's a deal. Okay, thanks, Britt.
Yeah.
Take good care.
All right, thank
Ciao.
you. Bye now.
Ciao, bye. Okay, we still got a couple of Win America's Cup video and then this day in history, because I get criticized, Julia, if we don't run this day in history.
I even have a couple.
That. You do?
This way, yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Well, this is a video from Luna Rossa Prata Pirelli. We've got to give equal time. We've shown all the other teams a little bit of Luna Rossa. Check out this video. I think we can say that Luna Rossa, the Italians in general, but Luna Rossa has the sexiest looking boat, the sexiest looking videos. I mean just classy, cool looking videos. They probably have the best team chefs, you know.
For sure.
We always liked in the America's Cup, we always like to get invited over to Casa Italia, whoever the teams were. They'd sometimes have other team members over and you'd have a barbecue or something. They always had great pasta, great food. One little bit of America's Cup news here. The arbitration panel today, the 24th, handed down a decision on coordinated testing. You probably didn't even know this was going on. It's not a big deal. But they had an S fight. Team New Zealand asked the question of the ARB panel to answer the questions raised by Kevin Shoebridge in his email on 9 November. Can the teams use the same marks when training to ease congestion? The teams are out coordinated. And you know, they're not doing anything coordinated. Basically, they're out in the same bit of water and their competitive juices flow and they go around each other's marks. It's not like they're hooking up and training. The panel said, yes, teams can use the same marks when training, so long as they are not doing that in a coordinated manner. In other words, the simple act of using the same marks is not a breach of the you got to train separately rule, Article 15.1 of the protocol. Is crossing tacks or jibes in close proximity permitted? Yes, for the reasons in one above. How long can sailing in close proximity on the same tack or jibe be without breaking the rule? Panel's answer: one cannot define a set of distance or time, as the article deals with the issue of coordination rather than length of time or distance. But the longer one so sail, the more likelihood the competitors would be considered to have, this is just a lot of BS.
What can we get away with is the question.
Well, it's what can we get away with? True, but it's also common sense. And what's ironic, if not more, is that the first day that New York Yacht Club's American Magic were out sailing around, guess who showed up?
Yeah.
Emirates Team New Zealand went out and lined up and so it's at least ironic, if not hypocritical, that they wrote this in. But that's fine. This is it's going to heat up even more than it has, and you're going to see more of these kinds of questions and answers and shots fired across the bow of one team against the others and so on. The UK's richest man, by the way, partners with Hyundai to make hydrogen happen. We all talk about electric cars and about fossil fuel cars. Well, look at this. This is an article on Bloomberg today on Sir James Ratcliffe, of course, who's the head of Ineos and the owner of Ineos Team UK. He's going into hydrogen. Jim Ratcliffe, Britain's richest man, is joining forces with Hyundai Motor Company, the Korean company, in a bid to give hydrogen fuel cell vehicles the boost they need to become more mainstream. Ratcliffe's Ineos Group will explore opportunities to produce and supply hydrogen to Hyundai, which has been making fuel cell vehicles in low volume since 2013. Ratcliffe may also use Hyundai's fuel cell system in the Grenadier, the Land Rover-like sport utility vehicle Ineos plans to bring to market next year. Julia, we had this conversation with our friend, the Mercedes mechanic,
Yep.
Mario Schumann,
Yep.
fellow member of the St. Francis Yacht Club, who has a thriving Mercedes business in fuel,
Yeah.
in gasoline,
Yep.
petrol cars. And he actually thinks that hydrogen has a much bigger future
Mhm.
than electric cars.
Of course, yeah.
And we'll see. But this
I
I thought was an interesting development.
I can't help but think of we now have the portable carry your own oxygen machine. And part of the oxygen machine is, getting rid of the hydrogen.
Well, right. This is what
So-
these
Yeah. So
well,
they
and as Mario says, you've got the ability with gas stations can be relatively easily converted to hydrogen stations, or so I'm told. But to have the infrastructure to have a fast charging electric charge stations all over the country or world is a whole kettle of different
I'm
fish.
thinking more about making your own hydrogen as you drive along.
Well, that's hydrogen fuel cells are that's a little more complicated than your late husband's oxygen bottle that made
I
oxygen.
know, but if it's available, if you can separate them that easily, there's
well,
gotta
true,
be.
and and of course it's clean because
Yes.
it's hydrogen
Yeah,
and oxygen
absolutely.
is water. But the other thing is, I noted today before we went to air that the second richest guy in the U.S. now is the maker of electric cars. So maybe he knows something we don't. Elon Musk he's passed Bill Gates as the second wealthiest
Yeah.
billionaire, 100 and something $1 billion, according to the market share of Tesla and whatever else he owns. So enough about that. One other note is that Panerai appointed official timekeeper of the Product Cup, the Challenger Selection Series for the 36th America's Cup. So congratulations to them and welcome to the America's Cup family. That wraps up our extensive America's Cup AC36 Cup date. Thank you again to Britt for doing that for us. And with that, we'll go to this day in history. We have two items, and maybe Julia has more.
I do.
Okay, so on this day in history, there's an item, big item in 1642, and an even bigger item I would submit in 1859, which have been drawn to our attention by Hamish Ross and others. So the first one is your clue to the 1642 one.
That was one of mine because that's when Tasmania was
Exactly. So
discovered.
this is, you've already gotten it because that is the esteemed Abel Tasman, the Dutch navigator, explorer, who lived from 1603 to 1659, did 2 trips down under and did a lot of exploration. The Dutch seafarer, explorer, and merchant best known for his voyages of 1642 and 1644 in the service of the Dutch East India Company. He was the first known European explorer to reach the islands where many of our sailing friends, our viewers, our foes live, Australia and New Zealand, including what was originally called Van Diemen's Land, now Tasmania. Van Diemen was some Dutch official, Fiji, and New Zealand. So that's Abel Tasman. But wait, there's more. On 24th of November, 1642, Tasman reached and sighted the west coast of Tasmania, apparently landed too, north of Macquarie Harbor. He named his discovery Van Diemen's Land after, there it is, Antonio Van Diemen, the Governor General of the Dutch East Indies. Those of you who are geographically challenged know that, probably everybody on here knows Tasmania is that big island south of Australia, the main land of Australia, to which the famous yacht race, Sydney to Hobart being the capital of Tasmania, goes. And that red dot, that red, what do you call those on Google Maps? Pins, is this beautiful coast by which the Sydney Hobart yachts pass to starboard, the coastal cliffs of the Tasman Peninsula. Beautiful
Tasmania is beautiful.
Have you been there more than once? You've been there a couple times.
Yes, but I've done a travel by car.
You've driven around.
Yeah.
Nice.
And there's lots of lovely stories and people and food.
Well, you know what else he did? He was also the first not only Tasmania, but also New Zealand and Fiji, as we said. And this little red dot here on the northwestern corner of the South Island of Kiwi Land is the Abel Tasman National Park. I got to go there sometime. Apparently, it's gorgeous. Beautiful, beautiful part of the world, beautiful part of this gorgeous country, New Zealand. And for our second This Day in History, here's your first clue. Famous artist rendition. 1833, HMS Beagle on the South American coast.
Aha.
HMS Beagle, does that ring a bell, Her Majesty's ship?
Yes.
You know this one.
Darwin,
exactly. And that's the trip they took going east to west around the Cape Horn, and they got up to the Galapagos. And of course, this is a long trip from 1831 to 36. And of course, Charles Darwin was aboard. His dad wanted him to become a doctor. He didn't want to become a doctor, but he did go on this trip and took extensive notes and started noticing things that long story short, led to his theory, early, very radical theory. I mean, it pissed a lot of people off, frankly.
Yes.
Darwin was born in 09 and lived to 1882. Wasn't particularly healthy in his productive years. When he did this drawing in 1837, he was only 28. At his home in London, he wrote at the top of the page of one of his red leather notebooks. That's after he came back from that trip on HMS Beagle, I think. And then he drew this spindly sketch of a tree. He had recently returned from the Galapagos Islands aboard Beagle and was working through scientific ideas inspired by his trip. More than 20 years later, between this, he noodled this. And on 24th of November, 1859, Darwin published a more fully developed Tree of Life on the Origin of Species. So that historic publication in 1859 radically changed the view of evolution, laying the foundation for evolutionary biology. And of course, it all relates to sailing as well, as it was published on this day, only 8 years after the America's Cup, which is a non sequitur. But only in 1859, just 8 years after the first America's Cup. It's hard to believe that when we think of the America's Cup as being sort of a modern day thing. Well, it wasn't. It's it's at the start of the Industrial Revolution. They didn't really even understand evolution at that point, but Darwin did, and full marks to him and to the cartoonists of the day. This is a caricature in 1871 after The Descent of Man was published. And no one's quite sure where that was. Probably got published all over the UK, all over England, apparently. But this is my favorite. You see this? Man is but a worm. And this was in Punch. And the Punch's Almanac of 1882. Starts out with a worm there in the lower part of that and circles around, goes up, and the worm becomes eventually a monkey, and then the monkey becomes other versions, and then finally walks and evolves into this gentleman, Victorian gentleman there in the middle.
Who looks a bit like Darwin.
Man is but a worm. I think that could become a saying here on this show, Julia.
Yeah, I know.
In addition to croutons and and bulges.
Awful.
And grundles. Man is but a worm.
Yeah. My Botanica has another famous happening on today, because it seems that it is the birth date of a famous videographer or videocaster called Tom Ehman.
This is my birthday. My mother tells me, thank you, Julia, that's very kind. My mother tells me that I was born at 0400 on this day. Speaking of casters, I was running a little late, so the doctor came over, she said. And in those days, you took castor to induce labor. You took castor oil and something, she told me. And she sent me this email, castor oil and something. She fixed dinner, as she did every night, for my dad, and I guess my grandfather came over. And sure enough, the castor oil and whatever else it was she took did its thing, and she was in hatching me at 0400 that morning. No wonder I like to get up early.
I know.
Thank you, Julia. I appreciate that on this day in 19
Yeah.
53.
1859.
Thanks, Julia.
Yeah.
That's about it. We got one or two other pieces of news here. We told you last Friday. It seems like a Friday, doesn't it?
It does to me,
I
too.
guess it's because it's Thanksgiving week and so many people are on holiday. But
Yeah.
we told you that the New Zealand Herald was talking about a 2021 Sail GP event in New Zealand. Told you that Christchurch, according to the New Zealand Herald, is on the cusp of signing a deal with Sail GP to bring the yachting series to Littleton Harbor in January 2022. Okay, that's a year plus away. It may still be true because we know we have this team with Blair Tuke and Pete Burling. They're seen with Russell when that was announced. Well, yesterday it was announced by Sail GP that there will actually be two events. The first two events in 2021. Previously was to be here. The first event was to be in San Francisco. Remember that?
Yep.
But because of COVID, they're thinking maybe we should go to someplace that is a little less COVID impacted than maybe California might be. So they're going to Bermuda in April of 2021, and then to June in Taranto, not Toronto, Taranto, in June of 2021. And moreover, Russell Coutts, Sail GP CEO, announced that prior to the season start, Sail GP's 8 national teams, Australia, Denmark, France, Great Britain, Japan, New Zealand, Spain, and the U.S., will use the stunning blue waters of Bermuda's Great Sound to hone their skills during a pre-season training camp. And for the first time, female athletes will be included in the training as part of Sail GP's Gender Equity Initiative. They are requiring each of the teams to have a woman on board, which I think is great news. In its inaugural season, Sail GP attracted a global broadcast audience exceeding 256 million. It's only a little less than what we get, Julia.
Yeah.
And an average economic impact of US 23 million per venue, boosting local hotels, restaurants, and business, or so says Russell's PR machine. Now, do you know where Taranto, Italy is?
No.
I didn't either. I had to look it up.
I
Frankly,
was going to, but I didn't.
I had never heard it. So
No.
if others are equally geographically challenged, it's on Italy's boot. In fact, it's the capital of that region. There it is in the middle between the heel and the one of the great features. It's an historic place because it's down there between Greece and you know the various empires of the region. This is the Castello Aragonese, the Aragon Castle, dates from the 15th century, which was a fort guarding the entry to Taranto. I wonder how to say it properly. Somebody who speaks Italian, obviously better than I, will know how that's pronounced. So that's going to be interesting. The weather should be great that time of year there, and I hope maybe to visit and see that part of Italia, a country we all love. A bit of sailing, world sailing news. There's an article today that our good friend Mikkel Thommessen published on sailmagazinenet.no with our Fozy Riccardo Simoneschi speaking his mind on short-handed offshore. You heard Britt talking about it. Riccardo interviewed on sailmagazinenet.no. It's a long 36-minute video interview that was done by Mikkel with Riccardo Simoneschi. I commend it to you. Go to sailmagazinenet.no. You can click on the little flags and see the interview. It's in English. The video interview is in English. The article can be seen in different languages, including English, French, Italian, German, Swedish.
Yeah, that's a
Finnish.
great website for that. They do a good job.
Yeah, he's doing a good job.
Yeah.
And by the way, there's also another article on there about this firing of the so-called Ethics Commission. But I'm not going to get into that today. But I do commend this interview with Riccardo Simoneschi. In a nutshell, he says, it's just like Britt Ward said, just like double-handed offshore racing is a thing of the future. Remember, this guy was president of the Star class. He was also president of the Melgas 24 class. He's a keen racing sailor himself and racing director at Yacht Club Italiano, one of the most prestigious yacht clubs in the world, as well as, to say nothing of, Italy. And he says it's not the right event for the Olympics. By the way, one hears that the IOC's Program Commission is meeting this week. And that's the committee that decides what the Olympic events are for future Olympics.
And when?
Including the 2024. Well, 2021, if it happens, is in the bag. All those events and athletes, that's done. But we're talking about the 2024, the French Paris Olympics with sailing in Marseille.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, that program commission is meeting. One hears they're going to tell the sports, you got to cut back, you got to simplify, you got to cut costs, and you can only have one venue, not three. Sailing's got three right now. We got the marina, meaning the shoreside venue. We've got then the venue and the shoreside courses. Then we've got this offshore racing up and down the coast, in the Med, of course, off Marseille. And then they've got another venue for the beach boats, the windsurfers, kites. And that may be reduced to one or so one here. So we'll see. It may be that the IOC tells all the sports, and this is what I'm being told by senior serious people, not to be surprised if this happens. It may be that the IOC tells all the sports stick in 2024 with the same events in 2021. Don't change, because there's only 3 years now between Tokyo and France, between Paris, and we'll see what happens. Okay. That's it, other than our 2020 Whiskey Tango Foxtrot segment. I commend this little video to you, especially those of you who like wine. Have a look.
Never in my whole life would I imagine that my hands would consume more alcohol than my mouth. Weird times.
Weird times. Weird times, Julia.
You bet. Yeah.
Did you send that to me, Marius Schumann? I think speaking of Marius Schumann,
yeah,
I think he sent that to us. Blowing on the wine in your coffee mug will help convince the rest of the Zoom people that your tea is hot.
That's good to know, too.
So if they think that, thank you for the mug, by the way. See what Julia got me for my birthday. You are special today. Thank you, Julia. Yeah. But we drink iced coffee with nothing in it, because if we started this 2.5-hour show with hot coffee, it'd be pretty bloody awful by now. So you got to blow on your wine in your coffee mug. Finally, it is Thanksgiving week. We've been told that in fact, we're back on. We have a curfew here. You can't go out after 10 o'clock. You have to be, you can go out, I guess, 5 in the morning, is it?
Yeah.
Are they closing down the salons now?
I didn't hear that. Don't say it out loud.
And indoor dining? Closed.
Closed. 25%.
I think they've closed it completely.
Yeah, indoor is closed completely until December 21.
Right, but outdoor is permitted, but it's way scaled back. We've been told that only 6 people, this is true. States are, and the governors in several states, many states are trying to clamp down because we're having spikes, obviously. We've been told that only 6 people are allowed to meet for Thanksgiving, which of course is this Thursday, but 30 for a funeral. With this, I announce that we will be holding a funeral for our pet turkey that will pass away on Thursday. Refreshments provided. In lieu of flowers, please bring a side or dessert. Good thing this show's over, because my iOS devices are now trying to update to 12.4 or my iPad is anyway. Yeah. Okay, well, that's it for our 2020 segment, our Whiskey Tango Foxtrot segment. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Thank you very much for joining us. And we do indeed hope you will be with us on Friday. But in the meantime, Julia likes to say,
like, share, and subscribe. And subscribing just means you'll be not charged, but get notice.
You're not paying a magazine subscription. You're subscribing to our YouTube page.
Yeah, that's correct.
Which really helps us. The more subs we get, as the kids say, the better. Comments too. I still not sure we've got, until we get 1,000 subscribers, I'm not sure we can have replay of our chat. I know everybody is upset about that.
Yes,
not the least of whom is us, because we like to go back and watch.
And it's hard. I miss the back and forth. That and I can't answer.
Spit it out.
Well, you
miss the back and forth on the comments.
On the comments, yes.
We all do. Great new birthday mug. Just put whiskey in the hot coffee. Simple. Yeah, John Emmett's probably right. He's a very smart guy. He may be the smartest guy we know. Coaching and sailing.
Yeah.
UK lockdown ends the 2nd of December. Fantastic news. So sad to see USA closing in on 300,000 new cases a day. Yeah. Julia, put a leash on Tom early Thursday morning. Let him lead you around the block. Stop at tree.
Because you can take your dog for a walk.
You can?
Yeah.
Well, we go for a walk. If I can get Julia out for a walk around the block, that's good. We try to do that too. And if you're so inclined, please join us. This is the Thanksgiving season. Please join us via patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated. Give us a few bucks each month to help us keep the show on the road. Julie, anything else?
No. Happy Thanksgiving to anybody celebrating it. It's a lovely time. It's my favorite holiday.
It is indeed. And thanks to Britt Ward again, who was terrific to get that kind of knowledge and for that length of time. We appreciate very much, Britt, you coming on and doing that. To all of you who do celebrate it on Thursday, anywhere in the world, whether you're here in the U.S. or a lot of expats around the world who do celebrate Thanksgiving, except when we lived in Spain, in Germany, we celebrated it on the Saturday because Thursday's a work day and a school day for most people. But if you are celebrating it, have a very happy Thanksgiving. Hope to see you on Friday. We will be live at our normal time, 1 o'clock Pacific on Friday. In the meantime, stay safe. Go sailing. Ciao. Bye.